tell you a story. It's not scriptural, and it's set in the late 1930s. It was right around World War II. The U.S. sent the Army up to Canada, and they were building railroads. And so while they were there, and anyone knows if you're in the military, you get to know the locals in good ways and in bad ways. And this particular Jewish gentleman met a woman. And they supposedly fell in love. They got married, and they had a child. Half Jew. Family was outraged. Young girl, teenage. What do you think they did? They kicked her out. Mom and Dad, you need to go. So here he is with this U.S. military man building a railroad and this half-Jew baby. Can't have any relationship with your mom and dad. One day, Dad doesn't come home. Teenage girl with a half-Jewish baby in Canada during the World War II time frame. What do? She goes home. Dad says, I'll take you back, but you need to get rid of that Jew baby. And she does, because she's a teenage girl and she doesn't know what to do, and it's the early 1940s. So that Jew baby went into a foster care. And that Jew baby was raised by a beautiful family. Turned into a young man, graduated high school. Didn't know anything about his family. Knew his mom didn't want him because she couldn't have him. And Dad's nowhere to be found, but they know Dad was a U.S. serviceman. So now, this young man graduates high school, wants to find Dad. But the only way he can do that is to go to the U.S. And knowing his dad was in the military, he wants to be like his dad, a dad he doesn't know. So he joins the Navy, goes to Vietnam, serves on the riverboats. You know about the riverboats in Vietnam. It was pretty hellish. He did this because he wants to become a U.S. citizen like his dad. Gets out of the military, gets stationed in Boston, meets a woman. They have 2 kids together. This man, still searching for his dad, his mother-in-law helps him. And they track down the dad, living in Boston. They go see the dad, and Dad says, I want nothing to do with you. So he leaves. Finds Mom. That relationship was rocky. Now, during this time, this serviceman was suffered from something that no one knew about. It was called PTSD. Alcohol took over his life. He became very violent. He didn't know how to express his feelings. He had a mom who didn't want him, who couldn't have him, because he was half Jewish. He had a dad who wanted nothing to do with him. But he had a foster family that loved him, and for whatever reason, he could never fully hold on to that and love it in the way that they loved him unconditionally. He served a country that he became a U.S. citizen because he wanted to be like his dad who wanted nothing to do with him. He got married. He had 2 boys. The world got so overwhelming for him that became violent and he had to leave. Years later, he had found another woman that he had married, started a whole new family, finally found a little bit of joy in his life that he really wanted, but still struggled. And then one day, he's driving down the road in a rainstorm, and he sees something in the road, and he hits the brakes. Meanwhile, he's got his little kids in the car, his wife. He jumps out of the car, and he runs back, and he gets back in. And meanwhile, his wife's like, what the heck are you doing? He saw a Bible. He found Jesus. He found Jesus. And a few years later, that man died. When he was in Vietnam, he was exposed to Agent Orange and developed throat cancer and had a cough. Never thought anything about it until it was too late. But he found Jesus. And what's that radio? Now for the rest of the story. Right? What's that what we've been talking about? Forgiven. Things have been put into place that takes us down a road that we don't know where it leads to. But God does. And just as Jacob was forgiven, just as Peter was forgiven, this soldier was forgiven. Even though everywhere he went, rejection was around him, he was forgiven. And when the Lord took his pain away, people might think, oh, this is a tragedy. He finds Jesus and then he dies. His pain is gone. About a year before Ashley was born, the Lord gave me a dream. And the dream was that I would be leaving my in-laws' house carrying a little girl out of their home, and it was cold, and I would be bundling her up and putting her in the car. And a year later, Ashley was born. About 6 months before Ashley was born. As you know, my dad left when I was little. I tracked him down. I called him. And I spoke to his wife, and I said, hey, this is Joe, Dave's son, and I'd like to talk to him. And she said, well, he's not home. But there was something odd about her voice. And she said, well, he's not home. I'll give him the message. Okay. 6 months later, Ashley's born. Nothing. So I called again that day. I'm holding Ashley in my arms. I wanted to give him the good news. I wanted my dad to have the ability to be the best grandfather in the world, because we weren't there. Didn't have a dad. So I called, and there was his wife, Suzanne, on the phone, my stepmom, and I said, hey, yeah, this is Joe again. You know, I called a few months ago. Yep, I remember Joe. Yep. So I just want to let my dad know that Ashley was born. And I want to share this moment with him. And the most devastating news rang through my ears. That my dad died the March before April Ashley was born. And I was angry. I was angry because I was robbed. I wanted something with my dad, and it was gone. And then I was stuck because I'm the one that had to deliver the news to my brother. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any part of this. And the whole time when this was happening, we had friends of ours that I grew up with who got saved, and they were witnessing to me every day. And I was like, I didn't want any part of it. My life was a mess. I didn't have a dad. My home life with my mom was very rocky and tough. Her and I did not see eye to eye, and that was probably putting it as nicely as possible. You know, it was mutual on both parts. At 16 years of age, I'm no longer living at home. It was a tough life. And then here I am having to tell this news to my brother who shared this life experience with me. And so a few months later, I accepted the fact, and I said, okay, you know what, we're going to go out there, and we're going to go to Indiana where my dad lived, and we're going to go find what kind of life he was. I was expecting, you know, my dad was drunk, you know, he was an alcoholic. He suffered from PTSD. He had all these things that happened in his life. And so I was expecting to find this man a mess. The life was just a broken trails, right? And I get out there and what I find, a beautiful home, wonderful brothers and sisters, an amazing stepmom who just cared for her children. And I'm like, this does not make any sense whatsoever. And she told me the story how my dad stopped the car in a rainstorm and got out and found a Bible and found Jesus. That half-Jew baby was my dad. It was that moment right there that truly made me search God in the Old Testament. And I found Jesus. If anyone tells you, oh, Jesus in the Old Testament, Jacob and Esau right there. Forgiveness. And it was those things that set in motion. If my dad was a good dad, never left when I was a kid, would I have found Jesus? I don't know. But because that he did, all those things happened to him. If my grandfather had never rejected my dad and never not left home, would I have met Judy? Would I have even been born? Folks, the whole purpose of this message and what I found yesterday, right, in this entire week, was that I want you to understand something. That life is tough, life is hard, life is like, it overwhelms us. We get anxiety, we get depression. Thoughts of suicide do reign through people's heads, but it is a fight worth fighting because God is in control. The blood of Jesus is in control. Say the words with me. Jesus. Jesus. Forgiven. Those simple things right there is enough that we need to hold on to in our hearts to know that no matter what the outcome is, it's going to be okay. My dad's life was a train wreck of pain, one moment after another moment after another moment, and then he finds Jesus, and then guess what? He goes to heaven. There's no more pain. Victory is ours. It is. Folks, when we leave here, you have to have the joy of Jesus in your heart because the victory is won. You are forgiven. I've said it all the time. The hardest person to forgive is yourself. You need to let it go. I found myself with a close family member that I grew up with I haven't seen in years. And one day I realized, wait a minute, this person's not posting on social media. What is going on? Sent her a message, and she said, oh my goodness, you have no idea, Joe, what I'm going through. I needed to hear someone's voice who loved me. And I sat down, I had dinner with her, and she just needed a hug. Jesus is in control of our lives, even in the rocky, disgusting, terrible times that the world throws at us. And we need to be smiling and happy. And that doesn't mean you have to fake it. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to know that, hey, I don't have a perfect family. I don't have my life together. I don't have all the things that society should say I should have. Because Lord knows Jacob didn't. When you read the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, it says, I am the God of Jacob. Folks, Jacob was a mess. I mean, really. He deceived his brother, right? And he wrestled God. And had his name changed to Israel. And you're like, oh, Israel. One who wrestles with God. Folks, if the Lord of all creation says, I am the God of Jacob, the man was a mess, what more can he say of us? Persevere, because you are forgiven. And it happens by saying 3 words. Lord, forgive me. Lord, forgive me. Folks, when you leave here today, I challenge you. Share your testimony with someone. Whoever God has placed on your heart. Share your testimony because you are forgiven. Just like Jacob, just like Peter, just like my dad. And let me tell you something. Because of my dad, I am saved. I saw my brother get saved, and I was there when my mom got saved. There's never been a day in my children's lives that they did not know Jesus. And there's never been a day in my grandchildren's lives that they did not know Jesus. Because of my dad.